understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
I'm Sam. I study language and culture.
And what is our word today?
Today is episode 56, and the word is Reformation because, we are recording on November 1st. Yesterday was October 31st. Our Wi-Fi is being weird, so hopefully this is also posted on November 1st. I don't know. But Reformation Day was yesterday, October 31st. So we're going to do an episode on Reformation. What does that word mean? We are Lutherans, so it's a big deal for us, right?
Yep. Yeah, our candle is lit. Just so you know, we did already light our candle.
Candles lit.
And before we begin, we're going to do something a little...
My notes with a little church door with the 95 Theses on it down there.
I love that. Before we begin, we are going to update you...
Oh, darn, I don't have my water. You don't have water in here, do you?
I do not.
Carry on. Go ahead.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to update you on what we are currently reading.
Yeah, we're going to start episodes out with, hey, what are you reading these days? So, Dillon, what are you reading these days?
So, I actually just a couple days ago, and then I threw it under my desk, but I'm reading, I got it about a month ago. It's called Christmas in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you can see it. It's Christmas in Pennsylvania. And
did you get that at the store?
I did.
Was that with you?
Yes, at Barnes & Noble. It was actually a gift from one of our parishioners, two of our parishioners, actually.
Wait, did you get it at Barnes & Noble when I was with you, or is it a gift?
No, I got...
Oh, it's the gift certificate. That's right, the gift card. Okay,
yes,
okay.
Two wonderful parishioners of mine got us a gift certificate for Pastor's Appreciation Day, and I'm obsessed with different holiday traditions, and this is a wonderful book about different types of holiday traditions for Christmas, in particular, in Pennsylvania, and I must say that I love it so much. So many great things, good images, good research, and Advent and Christmas are coming. That's why I started it.
So our 3-year-old's napping, and our 4-year-old is right here off screen listening to us. So if you hear a little noise, that's what's going on, huh? Yeah, awesome, super.
What are you reading?
I thought you'd never ask. I read multiple books at a time. I'm finishing up a book that I've slowly been reading, Rilke. I know you know who he is, but he's a German poet. I'm reading a book of letters that he wrote to loved ones of his and people that he had met. Shh, baby, remember, you gotta be quiet. So he wrote a collection of, people gathered letters that he wrote in real time during his life to people who were grieving. So essentially, I'm reading a book that he wrote on death and dying, which sounds a lot worse than it is, but it's actually really beautiful on like grief and how to deal with grief. So I'm reading that. I'm almost done with that. Just a couple letters left. I've been reading it slowly.
And what time period is he?
Oh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
20s.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, that's true.
He's
yeah,
dead.
Around World War time. Yeah.
World War I, my favorite.
Yeah, because he talks about the war in some of his letters. Yeah. Sue Monk Kidd, if you know who that is, has this new book out. It's called Writing, Creativity, and the Soul. And if anybody knows me, something that I love more than anything, first of all, is writing. But when anybody writes about the creative process in a spiritual way, I love that so much. Because writing and creativity is, first and foremost, this very thin veil experience, and I love when people write about it, and Sue Monk Kidd is writing about it, and it's so beautiful and so good. And I'm about to start this book. The Disciples' Prayer, the prayer Jesus taught in its historical setting. So I bet there's some Roman Empire stuff in there, so I'm excited for that. All right, are you ready?
For Reformation?
Reformation. So what does Reformation mean? October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther, you want to tell the story?
Well, I'm not going to tell the whole story because there's a lot that goes into
Real brief,
it. But,
so we can jump into why it matters.
Yeah, so month of October, recorded in something called the Augsburg Confession, which is the Confessions of the Lutheran Church, that it was on October 31st that Martin Luther either nailed or posted his 95 Theses to.
Yes, the story goes that there was a hammer and nail.
Yes.
Is that true? We don't know, but I do love that imagery of like he has a hammer and he's like nailing.
They
this
were posted
thing
in some way, whether they were nailed or not. That's up to interpretation. But Martin Luther, meaning he posted these 95 Theses, which were 95 church reforms to the medieval Roman Catholic Church in the Holy Roman Empire, where he was living at the time, which is present-day Germany. He posted or nailed these 95 church reforms or theses to the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany.
Have you seen that church?
I have not, actually. I've been to Germany twice, but I have not seen All Saints Church.
It's on our list. I feel like we're going to go there soon when the girls are just a little older.
Yeah.
And can fly.
I've seen, obviously, pictures, and it's a very beautiful church. It was a Roman Catholic church. It is now a Lutheran church.
Yeah. Can we talk about who, really quick? Martin Luther, again, was not just this random dude. He was a priest. He was a Catholic priest. He was a monk.
Yes, in the Augustinian order.
Yeah, he was a professor, right? So he was in it.
Yeah.
He was drinking the juice. He was in it. He was not just somebody on the outside having opinions. He was part of it. And I think this is really important because I'm a language person. 95 Theses was written in Latin. That was not common tongue. That was the language of the elite, of the church people. He was writing to church leadership because he wanted to reform. If he wanted to get the public all riled up, which it did end up happening, but if that was his intention, he would have written it in a language for the public, but he didn't.
Right.
It was in Latin, which only the elite could read. Only the clergy could read, and that really matters.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And he also advocated, maybe we'll get into this, maybe we won't, but one of his church reforms was to the opposite of what Samantha just said, was to have the Mass, to have church services in the native tongue called the vernacular, so that people would understand what was going on at church, because the common people of that time did not know Latin. It was only the clergy and the aristocrats, the royalty.
Yes, and again, he was a professor and he was a priest, a monk. So he was writing this because he wanted it to be up for academic debate, because he was an academic, he was clergy. And in those days, just like today, especially in the Lutheran Church, mainline Protestant Catholics, oftentimes they're academics as well who study this stuff. He wanted this text that he took the time to write to be up for academic debate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to give any more history as to why these reforms came, or are you going to hit that, or?
I want to talk about the language and the literacy of it all, because this changed everything when it comes to how we read, why we read. It changed our brains at a very physical level, right? So I want to talk about the language and literacy.
Yeah.
We also, remember, we did do an episode on Protestant like a year ago.
Yeah.
So we've given a lot of this information on like how Protestantism came to be.
Yeah, I just want to focus on three things, just not even focus on them, but just like let them know. The three main things that that drove church reforms with Martin Luther and other reformers, but indeed specifically Martin Luther, in 1517 with his 95 Theses, was that Martin Luther, who was a Roman Catholic priest in the Augustinian order, which is a specific religious order of the Catholic Church. He was very, very cognizant, meaning he was thinking about three things that were going on. The medieval Catholic Church in that time period, in that specific place that he was talking about, were doing three things. There was more and more increase of the authority of the Pope. And that the Pope was everything. The Pope actually was becoming, in that time and place, more powerful than God. And the Pope's authority was absolute. There was issues with church government, church authority with the Pope. That's the first thing he kind of railed against. The second thing that he railed against was the church was teaching that you must do good works in order to be safe in the afterlife and to be safe here. living in your place and space. So if you were not doing good works,
and those good works were tied to, this is important,
well,
they didn't just mean let's go feed the hungry. It was tied through the church. Your good works had to go through the church, right? So they were capitalizing on people's fear to benefit the institution that they were a part of.
Yeah, so it wasn't about God's love and grace and forgiveness.
And the fact that we should be feeding the hungry and clothing
right.
the naked and all these things. It wasn't that.
No, it was about continuing to do these good works so that God would love you. This placed people in fear, and it misinterpreted the church's teaching and scripture. And so he said that people are justified because of God's grace when they have faith, when they know that God loves them and forgives them, not because they have to do all these things for God to earn that, to earn that love from God. So that was the second thing, justification by grace through faith. And then the last one, so these are the three. The last one was rather interesting in that something called indulgences. And indulgences were monetary things. So you would buy and sell. You would buy candles. You would pay to have a service or a mass done for you. You would pay to pray to the saints for them to get loved ones out of purgatory. It was this monetary payment through indulgences at which the church would take away your fear. Of loved ones not being with God, of you not getting to heaven, all this type of stuff. And Martin Luther found this to be really disgusting and really nasty. And so one of the arguments why he might have posted or nailed the 95 Theses on October 31st is because the next day was All Saints' Day, which is actually today. November 1st. And the church stopped honoring and remembering the saints and made the saints intercessors. If you paid money and you did good works to and for the saints, God would love you more. Mm-hmm. And so he said this monetary, having to give all this money to the church and do that is not right. That doesn't mean that Martin Luther says that we don't honor and remember Mary and the saints, but we don't pay monetary indulgences So it was the Pope, it was saved by grace through faith, and no indulgences, which also talked about not putting an emphasis on purgatory.
Yes.
So those were the three.
So 95 Theses is a list of essentially 95 complaints.
Yeah.
Very, like a pretty hefty document that he nailed. The story goes, legend has it that he.
I like it. I like it.
I like that imagery, but I do also like to give the disclaimer that there's not much evidence to support that it was actually hammer and nail, but somehow he fastened it to the door. He delivered it, and he didn't intend for mass rebellion, although this is now known as the Reformation. It's what it caused. He didn't intend for mass rebellion, but he did touch a nerve.
Yeah.
He touched a nerve, and people really ran with it. And this was a real linguistic reformation, right? So let's remember, and I don't want to go into everything because this could be a whole podcast, not even an episode, a whole podcast in itself, all of the intricacies. But Luther, he was hiding, long story short, he was hiding in a castle, and in 1522, he started the German translation, right? And then in so I think the same year, 1522, William Tyndale, who's fascinating, and his translation choices are so rebellious. I just love it. And I've talked about that.
They're almost lost on people now, though.
Yeah.
But at that time, yeah.
Yeah, so good. But, which we've talked about in a couple different episodes. But he used Martin Luther's German translation to help him with an English translation. So we just see all of these Bibles that used to be in the Latin Vulgate, right? But we got English, we got German right there, and then countless other came to follow suit. But the Bible started to be translated because of Martin Luther and some other reformers. They started to be translated into the common tongue, and this changed everything. Because now, for the first time, you used to have to go to church to hear the Bible read, oftentimes in history, in a language that you didn't even understand, and you just trusted that the priest who gave the sermon was telling you the right thing. There was no, your wrestling with it wasn't really there. It wasn't invited. And unfortunately, in some churches, not just Catholics, even Protestants, In some churches, that outward wrestling and doubt and critiquing and questioning is still frowned upon. Right, so there's still that legacy in some churches. Do you have more to say? Because I'm going to get into the printing press and humanism. And
no, just also that Martin Luther, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but so Martin Luther did translate the Bible, yes, into German, and it became more accessible, as Samantha might talk about more. But for everyday people in the home, people who were in the home, Martin Luther put together something called Luther's Small Catechism, and it focuses on a couple main things. It focuses on the Ten Commandments, teaching the Ten Commandments. It also focuses on the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed, the two sacraments of baptism and Holy Communion. It talks about the importance of confession, and it offers some prayers in the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and meal prayers. And this helped people live the Christian life because the catechism was actually much more accessible than the Bible. The Bible, you had to know history and language
like
and behind,
now.
right, just like before, but the catechism was a device for everyday people.
Yes, I think that's really important.
And it helped with their literacy.
Yes, reading the Bible, we are always in this tension of, I think it's beautiful that we have access to have a Bible in our home, because about 500 years ago that was not the case, right? You didn't get to just read it on your own. Reading the Bible was never meant to be an individual act. It has always been a communal endeavor, right? So the catechism, when people had it in their home, was to come alongside it and help people begin to not even interpret, sort of interpret, wrestle with it, read it, right, understand it. So I think that's really important, because the Protestant Reformation, I think the worst thing that came out of the Reformation, I think the best and the worst thing at the same time, is that people can have the Bible on their own and just read it at home and think that's enough. It was never, the Bible wasn't even written by individuals. It was written by these like people engaging in community. It was written by many people, and then different communities and groups and councils and committees came together and decided what is it, like what's in the Bible, what's not. It has been a communal effort from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the catechism, there's, I forget the exact words, but the catechism, so the idea is the Ten Commandments help you follow the teachings of what God has given us, and it makes a society better. Through prayer, the Lord's Prayer and other types of prayers, you connect with God, you have a relationship with God. The Apostles' Creed teaches you what the church believes about God. And the sacraments are where you meet God, where God comes to you, where God's true presence comes to you through baptism, through Holy Communion, through confessing together, and knowing that you're forgiven and restored in wholeness and healing and all these types of things. So the idea is that if you are kind of living the catechism, that was something manageable. But reading the Bible from like Genesis to Revelation,
daunting. That's
not manageable. I mean, some people might be upset about me saying that, and I'm a pastor, but that's not manageable. There is a lot there. A lot of beauty, a lot of wonder.
Not only is it not manageable, it's not true to everybody's personalities. Listen, I'm here for it.
Oh, me too.
I have a lifelong goal to understand, maybe not understand, like fully grasp it, but like I want the context of all of it. I'm here to engage with it. Not everybody's wired that way, and that's all right. Some people are a lot more embodied, you know what I mean? And I think that's okay. So what's really important is that so we've got October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther, and all these things that happen, and then he has to go into hiding because they want to kill him, right? He's considered a heretic, which is a really big deal. And then he starts to translate the stuff into German, and we got English translations. We got just people trying to translate, and all these translators, by the way, the church wants dead, and some of them got their way, right? So some of them were put on house arrest. Some of them were
burned
executed.
at stake,
some of them were burned at stake. Yeah, we got all these things. But at the same time, in history, something really big happened, which is the invention of the printing press. So you've got these Bibles, then you've also got the printing press at the same time. So now you can mass produce. You don't need a scribe to take months and months of writing this stuff down. You've got the printing press, and now you can turn these babies out really fast and give them to the masses. So now people have access very quickly to these Bibles in their own language, which is the first time this has happened, right? And for the first time, women are really encouraged to read, because women were raising children in the home, and you want your children educated in the church. And now that the Bibles are in the home, and you've got catechisms to go along with the Bible, women are expected to start managing the church education of their children, not just in church once or twice a week, but now at home regularly as well. So women are encouraged to read for the first time in that line of history, which is radical and changed everything. Because you know what happens when you have women and children reading the Bible? They start to say, hey, wait a second. My whole life, the church has been telling me it says this, but when I read it, that's not that clear. It doesn't, that's one way, but that's a flawed way to look at it. So now we've got interpretations from the masses coming in, and it's messy in the most beautiful way.
Yeah, another interesting thing with the Reformation was that a lot of religious instruction in terms of like the catechism, that was being done in the home, so that when you came for confirmation, you were fairly prepared. Not that all of it was done in the home, but a majority of it was done in the home. Now it has been reversed. Almost none of it is done in the home. All of it is done through the church.
Can we actually linger there?
Hold on,
Yeah.
Can I just say something? This is a little anecdotal story. I took my youngest daughter down to Boyer's, which is a local grocery store here where we live, and I was talking to an old friend of mine from high school who was brought up Roman Catholic, and I was telling him that another friend of ours, their child is in my confirmation class, and he said, oh, how do you like teaching confirmation? And I said, it's one of my favorite things to do. I love teaching confirmation. I said, spending 2 years with those kids is amazing. It's wonderful. And he looked at me and he said, 2 years? And I said, yeah, it's a pretty long time, isn't it? He said, no. He said, when I was growing up, he said, from the time I was in first grade until middle school, we went for almost 6 years to confirmation. So for 6 years, they were learning the teachings of the church and all these types of things.
I think of Jews going to Hebrew school.
So this idea of the reduction of religious instruction is I'm going to say it as a Protestant pastor, is detrimental to what pastors would call the catechesis, the religious instruction of the masses, of the people. It was so funny. He was he's my age. He's in his mid-30s. He was flabbergasted that 2 years and done.
Yes. Protestants wanted to make everything really accessible, but there's a shadow side to that. And so I think it's really beautiful. Yes, of course, the masses should have access to all of
absolutely.
this. And yet it comes at a cost, because what that means is people can dip in and out of the church life as they please, which again is okay. But when you have a community not committed to the process, what you have now I teach a class, and I teach the older kids, like right before they graduate high schoolers, and Dillon teaches people right before me. What you then have when people dip in and out like that is a structure that falls apart, because now Dillon has so many levels every year. Like some kids who have been going to church this whole time and their families talk about it at home and they're ready to go a little deeper. And then you have kids who have never been in church before. They've never been sat in church before, but you're trying to teach them church stuff, but they've never gone to church. Right? And I'm not trying to say that's a problem. Like, yes, those kids should be there. Of course
they should.
If they want to be, if their family wants them to be, yes. It's very difficult, though. It comes at a cost. There's a shadow side to it.
Right.
When people aren't committed to the entire church life and they just think there's certain boxes to check. or you think confirmation is it and then you're done, right? And again, this is related to Reformation, because before Reformation, the church had high control. That's a problem, but people were committed. You go, there's a church life through adulthood into like following you through your life stages, whatever life stages those are for you. There's a process for marriage and for giving birth and for losing loved ones. Ooh.
Oops.
So
All right.
you okay?
You okay?
We just dropped some pens. And I think that since the Reformation, a lot of that has started to really crumble in Protestantism, because we don't have the commitment, because it's so accessible. I don't know if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah,
And I'm saying that as someone, I have not been confirmed. Well, I have whenever I became a member. But as a child, I didn't go through confirmation. I wasn't raised in the church
been
life.
received.
I've been received. But, okay, so the printing press and mass publication. Women were encouraged to read, and this really complicates both interpretation but then doctrine as well,
Sure.
right? And not just women, but also men who weren't in elite status were reading this, being like, wait a second, children, teenagers, like just all these different kinds of people were reading this stuff and realizing they've been telling us something as if it's like this is the only way to understand this, but whenever you actually read it yourself, that's not necessarily true.
Right.
For some of the stuff. So it really broke it all open. And then around this same time, we're talking about like 1500s going into 1600s, you've got the Bible in common tongues, you've got the printing press, and then you've also got the Enlightenment happening, which is where the church is losing control in society. So what you have is people really starting to want religious freedom. Again, beautiful thing, fine. But also individual liberty. You see this desire for individualism, which I take real issue with. I think we went too far in that direction, and we're seeing that all crumble now. Everybody wanted their own individual freedom, their own individual stuff. And again, shadow side, we lost community. We lost communal stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the arguments I hear this a lot from people.
And I'm going somewhere with all of this.
Okay, real quick, that are also well-intentioned, very well-intentioned. They say, well, I don't need the church. I don't need the church, and I don't need the sacraments, and I don't need the community. I could just pray at home. I can read my Bible at home. Sure, of course you can.
I know what's right myself.
Right.
I can just go and do it.
Of course you can. There's no argument.
I believe in God, that's enough.
Yeah, there's no argument there. One of the things, especially with the Bible, is, I'm going to come out clearly and say it, I realize that people read the Bible personally and devotionally, and that is not altogether bad.
No.
But when you are only doing that, that you create a silo, and you are losing the what it was intended to do. I think of most of the New Testament, even the Old Testament. You would go to the synagogue and you would hear them read. You would go to the Hebrew schools and you would talk about the interpretations.
And you'd wrestle with it, and you would take care of each other.
And in the New Testament, most of the letters of Paul and others are written to specific communities of people. The Gospels are written to be read in community.
That, I feel like so much of what we say every episode is just regurgitating the same stuff but in a new package, but I'm also okay with that. So two things. I think that if people have been listening for 56 episodes now, they probably know this. Dillon likes to say things very kindly, and Dillon's not as direct of a communicator as I can be, so I'm going to be a little more direct in my stance on it. When people are like, well, religion's just for personal transformation and I can get that without church. Or, well, I've been confirmed, I don't really need to go to church. Or like, oh, well, I believe in God, I don't need to go to church. Again, if you're not a church-going person, if you're not a Christian, fine. This is not for you, and you're probably not here anyway. If you're a church person, if you are a Christian, it has always been about joining in small communities and caring for each other and meeting God together. There is a time and a place for individual stuff. I'm not saying that's not the whole story, and that's my whole point here. So if I can take this to the end.
Of course.
You've got the Bible being translated into the common tongue. Again, I study language and culture, so this is why I'm here talking about this stuff, and this is church chatter. because we talk about church stuff, but also the chatter is the language stuff, right? So you've got the Bible being translated in the common tongue. You've got the printing press, churning out Bibles. Here you go, everybody, right? You got Bibles, catechisms in the home. Catechisms in the home. And then you've got the Enlightenment happening around this time where people are like, oh, my individual freedom matters, religious freedom. Again, beautiful things with a shadow side, like everything that we have to address. The shadow side there is people wanted their individualism. It's all about me and my transformation and the church and the community that cares for each other and walks us through the stages of our lives. That doesn't matter anymore as long as I believe, because faith alone, right? Faith alone is all I need. If I've got faith, I don't need anything else. They forget that a community is where the damage is done. The community is also where the healing occurs. There's no other way. We don't heal on our own. We have to go out into the wild to heal, right? We can't just sit in a room by ourselves and think it's all going to be fixed. We got to put it into practice. That's the thing. Also, humanism. This is the time of history for humanism, which is human agency. We don't need God because we already have it. We already know what's good. We don't need another source to guide us because I'm enough. So we all became mini gods, right? And then reason, logic, individualism, scientific revolution. Again, science is a beautiful thing. It brought us vaccines, and we all get to live to be ideally in our 80s, 90s, 100s now, right? Beautiful. Awesome. However, all of this individualism, all this reason, logic, mind stuff, we became disconnected from our bodies. We're depressed and we are anxious because we're not in community as we should be, because we are human beings. We are social creatures. We need other people, and not just our small nuclear family of 3 to 6 people. No, we need people. We need to wrestle. We need conflict even. We need people who aren't completely aligned with us. We crave it. We need it. We require it to be healthy humans. All of this is where I'm heading, laid the groundwork for where we are right now in the United States and elsewhere. This laid the groundwork for capitalism and for democracy, 2 things that are crumbling. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they are. What will come next, I don't know. But those 2 things, capitalism and democracy, 2 can be beautiful things, but they are dying because we took it too far. This individualism stuff, am I communicating that in a way that makes sense? And all of this came because of the Reformation. And many things caused the Reformation. It wasn't just Martin Luther operating alone. A lot of things historically led up to that, right? As history does. It's never just like, here's one storyline. But the Reformation happened, and all of that came because of it. And we took it too far. We are living in isolation. We are depressed. We are anxious. Our bodies are not very healthy. We have lost our connection to the earth. We have lost our connections to our flesh cages, right? We are all in our head, and we think science is the only thing that matters, and reason and our individual liberties, and we forget the community and the body and the soil and the earth, and we're destroying all of it in the name of profit, because capitalism and the Reformation lay the groundwork for capitalism, in the name of democracy, which could not exist without individualism being the first and foremost value of the culture. And it is, right? Again, I'm not saying democracy and capitalism are inherently bad. They have a shadow side that we like to ignore because we like to lift it up as an idol. There we go.
Do we need to say any more?
That's where I wanted to take it. That, like, I think sometimes we think, oh, wow, yay, Reformation. It was all so good. Yes, but every good thing has a shadow side, and we have to talk about it, because if we don't look at it, it's going to swallow us whole. We have to look at it. And that's what's happening culturally, I believe, right now. I don't even want to say I believe it, I know it. I think if you're not paying, like, if you're paying attention, those 2 things, our economic system called capitalism and our political system called democracy, they're crumbling. They're falling apart. And I say let them, because we ignore the shadow side for too long that it's swallowing us whole now.
So
Shut me up, because I'm going to keep going.
Oh, no. This is my last comment, actually. But so there's questions among most Protestant pastors, especially mainline Protestant pastors like myself, and mainline Protestants just in general, even who are not clergy, is it is not okay to just live in the past of what has already been reformed, ed, past tense. It is...
I love when you get grammatical, you know?
Yeah. the whole idea of the Reformation, and I had a professor at Gettysburg, Dr. Gill, his name is, and he would always talk about being a church of the Reformation, the Lutheran Church, the church that we're a part of, the Lutheran Church, is a church of the Reformation. And it is not okay to just look at the past about what Martin Luther and others did more than 500 years ago. But what does a Reformation church have to do with people who are living in 2025? It's not about being reformed, and it is about being a church who is reforming.
Well,
ing, ongoing.
Yes. But let's tie what you just said, which is really beautiful, into
And take
democracy,
both.
because all of this stuff with the Reformation helped lead to democracy. It's one of the defining things, right? Is Nadia Bolz-Weber said this, and I love this, and I like to be clear. It's no secret I'm a left-leaning political person, right? It's okay.
Are you?
Yes, I'm a quite left-leaning person. But there's nothing. I have no problem with Republicans. I
No,
have no
I don't
problem
either.
with conservatives. And Nadia Bolz-Weber put it so beautifully. I think the founding fathers, even when they created this democratic system, it's like a bird. You need the right wing and the left wing. You need them both to go anywhere. And you're talking like conservative. And I know conservative and Republican can be two different things, but let's just talk progressive. To progress is to go into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Progressives tend to be okay, we claim to be okay with change, like progress, right? And conservatives like to conserve the past. We need both because there are things from the past. There's nothing new on earth. It's always taking things from the past and changing it a little bit. You know what I mean? So we need both, but somehow it got all whack.
I think one of the
The wings
greatest
have been clipped, and it's
just I think one of the
wacky.
greatest arguments for bringing both liberal and conservative thoughts, not just politically, but just philosophically together, is with the environment. You must be a person of conservation, conserving things, to keep ecosystems together, and to keep migration patterns together, and conserve by reducing pollutions, right? To conserve, to keep the ground and the air and the water what it should be, what it could be, right? You need to conserve that. That's what conservation is all about. You also need advancement and progress in technology in order to do that. So when it comes to the environment, you need both things together. I'd also like to make a little note that the whole idea of conservation and conserving lands, maybe not so much today, was an actual conservative ideal.
Yes.
Something that Republicans almost 100 years ago championed. And now, not so much.
But even the food stuff and the earth stuff, it gets so interesting, and this is how divided it gets. We're all saying the same thing, is that like the earth matters, right?
Yeah.
Right. Generally, though, somehow the right claimed we need to go back to before preservatives, to before processed food. We need to go back to when we ate really clean. Somehow the Republicans, the conservatives, got to claim that. And somehow leftists have claimed climate change because that's going to be a problem in the future. So we need to progress differently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all saying the same thing. We need to return to our connection to Earth.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating, this is just a little tidbit, but the Earth doesn't need us, but we need the Earth. Right? Human beings could be wiped off the face of the planet tomorrow, and the planet would actually be better off for it. But if the Earth was taken away, we wouldn't survive. We need the Earth.
Right.
We are
It's
reliant. Earth is not reliant on humans, but humans are reliant on Earth. And I think we should all let that sink in. And I think all sides politically can connect to that. And yet, we're saying the same thing. Connect to Earth. Live close to the ground. Eat food that comes out of the ground. And yet, we're still finding a way. Like right-wing people are saying climate change isn't real. Left-wing people are saying, oh, your anti-vax stuff is crazy. It's all coming from this like I want to live close to the ground and connect to earth, but we're all like, it's crazy. It's insanity.
And for a Reformation episode, it is important for all people, regardless of their faith or no faith, to be a person of reflection and reform continuously, looking inward, number one, and then also externally seeing what is going on in the world and how can I open myself up to being a person of reform.
And that's a really good place to end, to tie it back. A person of reform, and to connect it politically again, because we got to capitalism and democracy, was...
And also religiously.
Yes.
Theologically.
And constantly thinking, in order to reform, do I need to go back to an old way or have a new way? And what's the tension between those things? Am I conserving, or am I progressing to something brand new, or
am I
somewhat
bringing
new?
them both together?
Yeah, it's living in that tension and really being thoughtful about both. Because sometimes there are old ways where it's like, yeah, we got to get back to that a little bit. Also recognizing you can't fully get back to anything ever. It's always moving. There's one direction and it's onward. So get in the boat and start rowing.
I think every time I go to church and I lead worship on a Sunday, or if there's a special day during the week, I think all the time I'm doing something both very, very old and something also very, very new. Mm-hmm. The old thing is I'm going on a Sunday every Sunday. That's the old thing. That's very ancient. I'm going on a Sunday. I'm also putting on a robe as a pastor and wearing a certain garment.
You're also married as a pastor. Which
is so those two things, Sunday and garments, very, very old, very ancient from the past, right? But I'm a married pastor with children.
And I don't want to brag, but if Dillon had to choose, he'd choose us.
Of course I would. Of course I would. And my thing is so I'm married. I have two beautiful daughters and a beautiful wife. And the other thing is that I serve in a church where women can be pastors, LGBT people can be pastors, and yet, so those things are seeing and opened and being reformed in a new way of seeing how God's inclusion and how we can celebrate that, but also at the same time, still meeting on a Sunday, still reading from the Bible, and giving the sacraments, wearing a special robe. That's very ancient, very old. So it's about you can still be reformed and reforming, and yet at the same time keep things that are very ancient and old and traditional, and the two can work together.
Well,
and Martin Luther, I'm biased, but Martin Luther did a very good job at that. Some people actually call him one of the more conservative reformers. Yeah. In that
I don't think I would have liked him. He was a miserable.
He was a miserable
SOB.
Old man, but his church reforms really spoke to people and allowed them to have liberation where they didn't.
Well, again, he's a human with a shadow side.
Right.
I'm into that word right now, but a shadow side.
Right.
He's anti-Semitic, right? All these things.
Well, sure.
You can't romanticize him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a great reformer. No, he was a person with problems.
Yeah, and we are too.
Yeah.
Not excusing that behavior, but yeah.
He was also, what a brave person. I mean, you knew the power that this institution that you were a part of, that you were employed by, that your entire well-being was wrapped up in, and you're calling them out, knowing full well that they have the power to murder you.
And the other thing too is not all the reformers, but Martin Luther, especially in the early days, he wanted to maintain unity.
Yes.
He writes, when I say there is one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church in the Nicene Creed, he believed that. He did not want to leave the Catholic Church. They got rid of him. They excommunicated him. He did not
knowing that if they didn't excommunicate him, there probably would have been a Protestant Reformation still, but Martin Luther wouldn't have been a prominent figure within it.
Right. It would have been a Reformed Catholic Church.
Yes. So there's this thing, so there are scientific, I haven't even told you this yet, but I've been reading recently. So there are scientific studies that show around the world, if you take a rabbit and you teach that rabbit or a few rabbits how to do a new trick that rabbit has never done before, rabbits all around the world around that time can learn that trick more easily or start doing that trick.
Oh, wow.
Right? And that's not woo-woo. The line between what is provable and what is woo is so blurred anymore because science has gotten to this, like, you know what I mean?
More expansive.
Yes. But that's wild. And that also shows that, like, Martin Luther is one of the more prominent reformers, but he was not the only one during this time, right? There's so many times, like, Einstein was not the first for the theory of relativity, right? Well, he was the first, but well, I don't even know if he was the first, but around that time, there were many people globally. He's the one who's credited for it now. But whenever humanity, whenever Earth, whenever we as a species are ready for something, it presents itself from another source to many people who are ready to give it to us, as demonstrated by animals who learn a new trick, and then suddenly animals all around the world can learn that new trick, or inherently have that new trick now. Because there's something about, it's like we're heading somewhere and there's somebody dragging us in that direction. There's a force, as Christians we call it God, right? But there's this force dragging us in that direction and kind of implanting this in different people at the same time. And okay, they're ready for it. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even without Martin Luther, there would have been a Protestant Reformation, because there were Count Line and Calvin. There were so many other reformers of that time. Yeah. But he is the big one.
So these are my closing comments.
Yes.
I would like to thank our wonderful 4-year-old daughter for being
so.
Do
you want to say hi quick? Just say hi.
Just say hi. So wonderful.
Perfect.
She really did a great job. That's the first thing. And second, as we move to a close here, yesterday was Reformation Day. That's our episode today. Reforming the church.
Why red? Why do we hear red?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So reforming the church and reforming ourselves to know God and community better. The Reformation is needed every day. We just celebrated more so in the fall of the year. Today's All Saints Day. Tomorrow's All Souls Day. It's really, really important to look to the people who have come from the past and that continue to speak new truths to us every day. And this is the time of year that the Christian church does that. So this next week or two, people like Martin Luther and other people in your own life, the saints, remembering those who have died, think about what they have done and continue to keep on their legacy even in new ways in this time of year. Samantha said about red. Red is used on Reformation Day or Reformation Sunday for two reasons. The first is because many of the reformers and those who followed them were killed for reforming the church, and so they became martyrs. And the red is the blood of the martyrs, and so red for Reformation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that red is connected to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is the one who speaks to us and gives us these new ideas, these new reforms. And so you have the redness of the Holy Spirit, who gives us these new ideas, who sparks these new ideas to be reformed and to continue reforming. And then also sometimes death might come with that. And so there's the red to remind that sometimes people are killed.
Yeah.
So that's the two reasons.
Yeah. So Reformation really led to reading the Bible alone, and this is a reminder that we are Christians, not Christologists. Ology means to study Christianity. We don't study Christianity. You can. I do. Dillon does. You can. That's fine. Study it at home. We are not Christologists. We are Christians, which means to be party of Christ. We belong to the party of Christ. A party is not you alone, by the way. A party is communal by definition, right? So to be a Christian, you got to show up to where the Christians are.
That was a snarky truth.
Stay curious, y'all.
Stay curious.
To understand the mystery, first take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues, so join us.